A Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate production.
Make your content accessible and inclusive to the deaf community. Deaf Interp Training Services provides sign language interpretation for your vlogs, podcasts, webinars, and other online content. Visit our website at deafinterp.com.
Coming up next on Miko Santos' Inside Job.
Mindset. Most of these podcasters are really amazing. So, all of them, in fact, because podcast is really, anyone who starts something as a podcast are really like, I personally believe are like the change, those who will change the world, or like they spread the good news. So I personally believe that they're doing something good, and someone actually needs to hear those people because they're experts in their fields, they're trying to be, or they're trying to learn more. So, just be in that mindset to learn, and you'll love the job. For me, I love learning and earning at the same time, and I love audio editing as well. I want to make people sound better, and I love the whole thing about mixing, mastering. So I think that's it. You just have to love those parts, and if you don't, then maybe editing is not for you.
Hello, Humanista. This is Miko Santos. Before podcasting and blogging, I used to be a journalist for 20 years, researching complicated issues or science which most people would not have the time or access to the information. This podcast is an insightful conversation with people at the top of their game and deconstruct them to find the tools, tactics, and tricks to help you achieve your dream goal.
This podcast is brought to you by Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate, powered by Kangaroo Fern Media Lab. Kangaroo Fern is Australia's independent video and podcast management agency with the mission to help individuals and entrepreneurs to start their own podcast and harness the power of podcasting. Book now via www.kangaroofern.com.
Good evening, good day, or whatever you are. So welcome to another episode of Miko Santos' Inside Job. For this episode, we're talking about podcasting. It's a big trend right now is a podcasting. So there should be a video podcasting now. There's an Apple subscription. There's a lot of happening in podcasting. But today we're talking about inside the podcasting. So if you try to listen on Spotify, there's a good audio, there's a good storytelling. So who is behind this podcast show? Say we have a podcast manager, we have a podcast VA, we have a podcast editor. So there's a lot of people involved in creating one show of a podcast. This time on Inside Job, we're talking about podcast editor and how to become a podcast editor. Of course, one of the best podcast editor around the globe, maybe, and especially because he got how much is 150 podcasts that he already produced. Wow, for 7 years. So please welcome Dave Visaya. How are you, Dave?
Hello, thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be part of this amazing podcast. So yes, 150, pero it's been all over the span of my career, no. But currently, I handle over around 80 clients per month on a regular basis. Kasi consistent podcast is the key. Consistent release of shows is the key to a successful podcast, di ba? So yeah,
that's right. So how did you get involved in podcasting? So I'm just trying to look into your profile and your bio. You are a nurse. How is the nurse become a podcast editor?
All right. So I myself is questioning that. How did that happen? Totally different field. But actually, I have a background story that I have been, I was a frustrated musician. Actually, I was part of a rock and roll band back in the days when I was in high school and college, and for after graduating, I played in a band, not the famous band at all. We play local gigs, but I enjoyed it. I played a guitar, so I'm a guitarist, and I played, lead guitar. So of course, you're into music. You're also going to be interested with creating songs. Actually, we play original songs in our band, rock songs. So of course, I tinkered around audio editing, like creating your own songs. So I used GarageBand before. I used apps that I forgot already. There's this Sony Vegas and all those apps. But yeah, and also surrounded myself with local musicians, like who really has a studio. So my uncle, who plays in a rock band in the Philippines called Franco, is also the guitarist of that band. So he has taught me a lot of good things about audio production, and just seeing and observing and drinking on the side while watching them doing their work. So I kind of have an idea of where to plug things, right? So that was really weird, because I never became a nurse, Miko. So coming from the Philippines, we were taught to travel abroad and get the greener pasture outside of the country. Well, I'm blessed that I was not. I mean, maybe it's a good life out there. You're in Australia, but for I don't know. I'm just maybe happy as well to stay here with family and all, to to do this thing, this podcasting. Thanks to podcasting that I'm still here and able to provide still and have a pretty decent life in a way.
So, what is your? How did you started? Did you went to an internship, or I want to be a podcast editor? I can do it.
So I was lucky enough because I was a VA. So I worked, for those of you who don't know what a VA is, it's a virtual assistant. And I think back in 2010, 2009, in fact, I was starting already. So I did this black hat SEO writing. So I just did any gig actually after graduating. And I was volunteering as a nurse. So during that time, I learned about you can earn money online. So I just did that. I created my Odesk account, and that's where I found out about this company, or work as a VA, chat support, email support, forum admin. And I've been with them, and they started a podcast. They were actually at around the 30th episode, so it's fairly new. So if they release weekly, they never miss a week ever since. But so that means around how many? Almost half a year of doing podcast. And they needed help with that because the hosts are getting busy, the company's getting bigger. So they were looking for someone to do the podcast edits, and they were doing it themselves, the host. So there are two hosts. So the one who was the lesser host, was not the founder of the company, was the one doing it. And, I was responding to that guy as his VA. So he's like, okay, do this. And what's your strength? And I actually have a background in music. So, this is going to be easy for you. So, and that's it. That all started. So I did GarageBand as a start, and did that for 5 episodes, 10 episodes. And, I got a hang of it. He taught me like everything about podcast editing, like that host of his fair knowledge of what to do, right? The basic, what to cut and all that stuff. But of course, as an enthusiast and also wants who really to level up my skill and the show in itself, that coming from that passion of really helping them, I did my own research. I did I really dig deep to it. I even took courses about podcasts or audio editing, audio engineering in general. And that's how I got here, from one client to another, and forming a team to help more and more.
This podcast is brought to you by Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate, powered by Kangaroo Fern Media Lab. Kangaroo Fern is Australia's independent video and podcast management agency with the mission to help individuals and entrepreneurs to start their own podcasts and harness the power of podcasting. Book now via www.kangaroofern.com.
What do you feel when you done your first editing to your first podcast show? How do you feel that?
That first podcast edit, Miko, actually it took me 8 hours just to edit. And when I pass it, he has to return it back because it didn't pass at all. It's I should have note of that what episode that was. I should listen to that again. It was so when you do the first cutting. I don't know if you edit your own show, by the way, but if you do, you realize that you get to OC, obsessive compulsive about it. Like you cut it so much to the point that there's no natural pauses, which is a common mistake for those who I train to edit with my team. So it's a beginner mistake. So it was I felt that I was lucky because the hosts were really amazing with what they're doing. But yeah, and they were forgiving, and which is it's a good way for me to really have this leeway and a chance to grow my skill over with them and grow with them. And yeah, I'm still doing it until today. So it's a fun process, I should say.
That's great. So what is the best thing about podcasting as a podcast editor?
So the best thing is you actually earn money while doing something, right? So who would have thought, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, there were no such thing as podcasts. I mean, there were. I mean, podcasts actually started, if I'm not mistaken, 2003, 2005, or something like that. So I actually have that in my one of my slides. But yeah, so the podcast in itself started quite a long while, but no one actually saw the value of it. There was no mobile internet yet. Our mobile phones are not able to handle those audio level listening. But it all changed when there was mobile. iPhones were built, getting better and better, and we can now listen not just on Apple but also on other apps. So it became pretty big. So of course, a lot of influencers and those who not necessarily influencers, the one who started podcasts in general. Back when I was still starting out, there were quite a few, but they were from business people who wants to market their brand. So those were the first few people who adapted it, and there were some outliers, of course, like those who are not yet, Brendan Burchard and all those entrepreneur on fire guy. So he started his show, and he's like, it was a blue ocean, if I should say. There's no much competitor. So that was it. And everyone thought that they can't do podcasting, but now it's a different kind of game. Everyone can start a podcast, like a YouTube channel, you can do it. So that's where we're at. So the need for everyone helping in the production of podcasting is getting bigger and bigger. So I think that's a great part. And I think it's a blue ocean, going back to that. There's going to be more and more opportunities as we move forward in the next couple of years as this podcasting grows. It's fairly new, I would say.
It's still in infancy, even it's quite long time already. Next question I have is for people who, because of the pandemic, a lot of people are starting doing a podcasting. So what is your advice to them if they want to start just a podcast, one show?
Okay, so it's going to be a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And that's one thing. I think also YouTube channel, if you want to start, or any endeavor actually, like a blog or something. So you have to take consideration of that, because it's not like a walk in the park that you can just, well, for some it is, but there will be instances in the podcasting process that will involve a little bit of work. It's not just, talking to people. There's editing, for example, is one of the things that are pretty difficult to do, or I should say time consuming to do. There's booking of the guests. So there's so many things involved. I think that's one of the most important parts, to really understand what you're getting into. A lot of, I don't know the exact numbers, but there's like this, I think, on the hundreds of thousands already of podcasts in the grave, right? They started the show, but there were no more update. No one's updating it anymore. No one's releasing new show. So there's a lot of them out there, because I think one of the main reason is this: they either, they change their direction, of course, but most of the reason is realizing that it's a lot of work. There's a lot of time involvement, and a lot of and it takes time to grow something. Some my first show that I've edited, they got their first sponsor. If we're talking about sponsors, right? They after like a first year of doing it, like 50th episode, 60th episode, what's when they get a sponsor. So not a lot of people are willing to do that. Like, stick to it for a project release on a consistent basis for a year at the very least to get traction with their show. And sometimes they don't even get that. It could be 100th episode, right? And sometimes if you're not improving each time, each episode, or just trying to figure out what your audience needs are, that could also, you could release thousands of episodes and still not getting traction from your show. So there are a lot of things involved in podcasting, and it's actually a journey of growing and improving it. So just like anything else worthwhile, right? So yeah, I think that's it. That's the number one thing. Learn about what's involved and be prepared to actually tackle those when you're starting.
So we're going back to podcasts editing, or as you're a podcast editor. So I got some question that some of my colleague and some of my listeners as well wanted to ask this, if they want to be a podcast editor like you. The first question is, how much does an editor cost?
So what do you mean? Like, like if you hire someone, right? Correct.
If you hire someone, how much does an editor cost?
Well, it depends, because there's a lot of ways to do it. You can be an assistant. You can be someone who works for that person and cover the whole podcasting process. It could be from pre-production, even during production. You can be on the call, and you can also do editing, right? So for my case, I focus on what I'm good at, so that's why I focus on editing alone. So it could go as per episode rate. You could go as low as $30, or even as high as $100 per episode, or even more, right? So depends on what you're providing. If it's just purely audio editing, I think the range for that for one episode, don't take me for it, but it could go as low as, there's some people who offers $15 per episode to $120. So that's the range that I'm seeing in the market. Of course, if you're looking for someone in the US or someone which there's a lot of them as well, we're looking at the higher part of that and there's higher part of that range. But they're also offering now, people now from the Philippines, for example, are offering this service too. So it's up to you how much you charge. Of course, you have to know your market. There's a market of who really is willing to invest a lot, especially if they have a good funnel already, which is one thing you should note, by the way. So there are some enthusiasts, like podcast enthusiasts, who just want to start a podcast out of a hobby and didn't really know what's involved in it. And some of them or most of them are thinking, oh, I can make money out of podcasting, which is I personally believe is a wrong, angle to start with podcasting. But instead, podcasting should complement what you're offering to the world, right? Usually I look for people who already has this clear path of how they want to grow their business. So that's how I look at it. So, but yeah, that's the range. Of long answer for a range of, but that's how I look at it. I actually offer packages for anyone who wants to start, to make it easier for them to decide. So yeah.
So sometimes did you charge by hours as well, or just depend on the package?
Mostly
as
don't.
well?
So I just calculate how much my hour would cost in a way, and then convert it. Okay, on doing this for quite a while, I know the average time of how long you'd edit one episode. So I'm thinking it's like 3 hours on average. So I'll just multiply that with my rate that you're thinking, right? So, or it depends. That's just audio only. If you want to do like video as well, then you can add that up. So that's it. I usually offer by package or by episode. That's how I do it. So as instead of like by the hour. But yeah, some podcasts are also do by the hour, which is great. But for me, I rather have that per episode rate to make it simple as possible and to be able to scale as well.
So next question here is that it's a I record a video or FV live. How can I get my editor what they need to create an audio podcast from it?
Oh, okay. So they have to get the video file first, right? I don't know how they do it with their, like, let's say FB. Sometimes you use Facebook, you use Zoom to do FB Live or StreamYard. Actually, there's a way to record through those apps. So depending on where you record, of course, the audio or the video, then you can just pull those up. Usually, they provide you with an MP4 or a file like Zoom has M4. What was that file for Zoom? Anyhow, but yeah, you can just get that and convert that. I think as an editor, you should know what are the difference between MP3 or lossless files like a WAV or AIFF, and also the other video files. And I use some app, of course, to convert those if needed. So there are apps like for me, I'm on a Mac, so we use like my, most of my apps that I use like are the isotope apps can open and convert those files. But there's an app like Media Human Converter, which converts like any kind of audio or video or any file, mostly that with the weird, last names. You can convert that, but you have to know as well which what are those, because in a Zoom file or any recording, there are some things that like weird files in there that are actually not audio. So I think you should know those primarily, because people might send you that, and that's actually not it's just an info for that video and not actually the video file. Of course, the file size is a clue to know if it's the right file too. So yeah, you can convert FB videos actually and download it. Even YouTube, you can download it and convert it to audio.
We are Independent Podcast Network. We are Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate. Would you like to hear your brand while supporting quality podcasts? Contact us now at advertise@guerrillapodcastsyndicate.com.
As a podcast editor, have you experienced like a client who is so like perfectionist on editing the audio? Like in 15 minutes and 35, this is what you need to do, and an hour, this you need to remove. Have you experienced that as a podcast editor?
A lot. So, well, to be honest, all or almost all of our clients, of course, who wants to hire someone to edit, are in a way perfectionist, or who cares. I think the right word is care about their content. That's why they want someone else to do it, or just wants someone to listen through it. So there are also who are on the extremes. Of course, I got just recently, actually about 3 weeks ago, someone sent me like this long list of edit notes where she listed all the ums in an episode, like there were like 60 or ums in there. I just got it when of course, I already like, taught her on how to do it. Like, you don't have to mention those because we actually listened to it. But yeah, so those are, she has that tendency, and it's hard for them too, because they're trusting you to do, to make them sound good. And that's why a lot of podcasters, and I don't know, even I myself has a podcast, right? Have a podcast, and I even hate listening to my own voice, right? So we're very critical with ourselves, and I totally understand that with our clients, and that's why I walk them through the process that it's okay, and eventually, because for me, or for a business owner or someone who's doing the high level work for their business, and they're doing podcasting to help that, but they're the host, so they have to show up. I think the least amount of time that they should dedicate, the better, right? And editing is one of those time consuming stuff that they should delegate. And yeah, so there comes a point where you need to delegate those tasks so that you can grow and their show. So yeah, so OC at first, but eventually they learn to handle that, create a balance, strike a balance with that, and I help them through that process, of course, so that it's a win-win for everyone.
So if our audience or someone listening right now or watching this podcast, what is your advice to people who is interested on jumping on as a podcast editor? So say from VA who want to be a podcast editor, what is your main advice to them, or what mistake that you already see before they jump on as an editor?
Sure. So, I think primarily, I mean, you have to love podcasting. I think that's the key here, and you have to really understand what you're doing. So, even if it could be any app you're using to actually improve the audio. I know a lot of podcast editors or even hosts. To be honest, I mean, not everyone knows about audio engineering and all that stuff, right? That's why we built people around the world built apps like Descript or was that Ophonic, right, to improve audio. The Leveler app. So I started from there. I have to be honest. I started with a Leveler app, and just figure out, before and after, I guess, learn what's a good audio and learn what you're doing, exactly what you're doing to help those podcasters out there. Because for me, I'm very clear with that. Our company is very clear with that, what we're doing. We have our mission statement in the back, but basically it's all about really making that message across for podcasters, because they have a message. We want to make it as clear as possible to the audience, that their targeted audience. So we make sure that they sound better and smarter than they are when after they're recording, and also their guests, right? So the guests will love their show because they have an editor. So yeah, that's the key. And everything else, of course, it's all up to you now. There's YouTube University. You can learn from the apps from there. And also for me, when I first started, of course, I don't have the purchase power to buy these apps, these computers, right? So start lean. I think there will always be a way to do it. It's just audio, unless you do video, which requires a lot of processing power. But if it's audio, you can start with really not power hungry apps like Audacity. I believe it's not that power hungry, so you can just do that and learn the basic compression and all those noise reduction. I think from all the if there's one thing, it's noise reduction. You should know how to at least fix a bit how background noise works. There's a lot of tutorials out there, but yeah, just figure that out, and I think you can go and start and learn the other stuff. Until now, I'm even at a battle of learning what a compression is or how to fix audio. That's just a different world. There's you take years to learn that, and for myself, I'm still learning. As I go through this. I'm not the whole expert. I learn from other editors as well. I have in fact, right now I'm working with someone in the US as somehow like a partner for his show as well. I do some of his production, so he teaches me a lot of things, because I am an editor, but I've gone through that and built a business in a way, and that's where my focus at really, because to be honest, to be able to handle 80 shows on a regular basis, you need to have a team, a great team. But you don't expect these people to actually have the skills that you've learned, that I've enrolled in this $1,000 course, right? They haven't enrolled to that, so I have to make a middle ground as well in how we can systemize it, and that's what I'm focusing at, really have a good quality product, but not necessarily taking so much time to do that. And so there are systems in there. I have templates and all that, so that's what makes this job really fun for me. Because of that you can try to fix things and automate things. And AI is one of the things, by the way, Miko. Isotope has this AI already that actually suggests you what are the issue with your audio, which is amazing. So you have to invest in those as well. And I invested quite late, actually just a couple of years ago, that I really purchased this expensive apps to help me with that. But nonetheless, start lean, and as you get to hang of it, get the one client that you love, take care of them, and grow from there. Or ask them that you want to purchase something. Maybe you can help me with this. This will help our show. Like most of the time, it's just recording. Really, Riverside solves that. Squadcast and all those amazing apps could help you, or as an editor as well, because trash in, trash out. It's also the works the same with gold in, gold out. Right? The better the audio, the better it comes out too. So we're not magicians here. We're just here to actually improve it. So whatever we get, that's what we should work on, and not like turn it into magic. It's gonna sound like a Joe Rogan show or something when they had a poor recording, right? So yeah, that's about it.
So before the partnership that you told me about in the US, so my question is, the next question I have for you is, as a new podcast editor, is that all right to promote yourself as like a free editing? Just give me a testimony about it. Is that right or good?
So
What is your opinion about that?
well, for me, I mean, it's really up to what floats your boat, right? And these are just marketing schemes, right? You can market yourself like that. You can market yourself differently. There's a lot of ways to do it. I was just lucky that I was able to get that client because they needed that. And most of the podcast editors I know actually started from that as well. That they learned, their boss needs them to do the audio. That's why they learned it, and now they're doing podcast editing as a profession. So it's really up to you. You can start with that. You can also offer really low rates. I guess that's one possibility. But I think the core of it is really make that. Like if you ever land a job already with that, I mean, take care of that client in a way. I think that's how most people grow it. And just develop your skills and improve your skills. You can always sell add-ons, and oh, you want this, you can do this, and so that's how you started. But free, it's up to you. You can do it. For me, I still even offer it because I have a capacity to do that. Like, not necessarily free. I hop on a call with them, discovery call, and if they want to give it a try, of course, you have to have this understanding too that they are in the capacity to actually do it. There's a lot of scammers out there, a lot of people who waste your time, but you have to have that discernment of, okay, this is worth a podcaster to invest a free episode with. And sometimes there's a lot of hacks too. Like for example, so I'm gonna give a way to do it. Like, don't edit the full show. I did once actually, who had this, I didn't feel like he's, for lack of a better word, worth the time for me to edit the full show, because he was sending me a horrible audio. So what I did was send him the first 15 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? Whatever works for you. Send it over. And this is what it would sound like if you want me to edit the show. And yeah, and I'll finish the show if you're in agreement with, okay, if you want me to finish the show, maybe we can agree on a small price so that I can continue doing that. So that's a hack. That's a thing that you can do, definitely. Because if they can't afford to pay for that, then they can't afford to hire an editor, right? So yeah, let's not promote totally free. It should be a win-win, right? And have respect for yourself, of course, as an editor. And it's not there's a lot of people in that industry. It's not just in podcasting, right? There's so many people, crooks in the world, who just want to take advantage of people. But the thing is, you have to discern that. And I still get those. I still get some of those. In fact, just today, it's crazy. There's just one of my clients who's just really hard to talk with. I think that's also a thing, right? Be willing to let go of those clients who is really difficult. Yeah, that might be your next question or not. But I'm willing to dig deeper to that, how to discern what a good client is and what's a bad one.
Actually, that's my next question. So, because so all of us as in podcasting, we have our own value. So sometimes it's hard if our value is not with the client. Sorry, mate, I have to let you go. So that's my next question to you. If you, what happened if your value is different from the client? Or how did you t- tell them, sorry, we have to part way?
Well, it naturally goes there, right? Because you can easily tell from it. And sometimes, yeah, I've had clients that I work with, because for me, communication is key. As long as they communicate, although there's a lot of concerns there, as long as we communicate clearly, and I'm open to them, like, okay, we need to adjust this pricing or something like this. You need to fix yourself and record on time if you want to release your show on time. Don't give us last minute work, or weekend. We don't want, I just want to put them into that understanding, as long as communication is there. But if I notice that there's a gap in the communication, I think that's one key, for one thing that's part of our values. Like, they also have to respect us in a way. So I've had some clients who were really disrespectful before, or prospects that were, didn't see the value of our work, which I guess you're better off with someone else, right? So that's what I say. I, of course, be professional as well, be courteous and all that. Like, someone sent me this just today, actually, which kind of made me feel down today. But send me this really weird long message of frustration, and most of it was really like, I mean, I it was coming from, why did you say this when we were doing that episode, and we went past that, and and all that, and it was just like, I think it was just finding a reason to cut it. But nonetheless, yeah, they weed out the, those are signs. So some telltale signs of these abusive and sometimes really not worth the while of a clients is, they kind of like disrespect your time. They're always in a hurry. They're always like, they kind of tell you, like, that the respect part, they don't respect your, the way they communicate as well. It's very disrespectful. I don't know if it's because I'm from the Philippines or whatnot, but if they're like that, I'd rather not work with them, right? Also, they have no idea about they have no idea about the job, and they take it lightly. I think that's another thing, right? It's not like, or rather, they don't try to improve their recordings or their habits of recording, which is crucial for us, because that's just a sign that they're also not very passionate about what they're doing. I mean, they probably hate podcasting and they're just forced to do it. So I'd rather not work with them. I'd rather work with someone who loves what they do, who cares for their podcast, and have a long-term vision of their podcast. Because for me, I would like to work with someone who will stay with me for the next 3-4 years, right? And I have some clients who actually stayed with me. And actually, the first client that I had is still with me right now. The one that taught me, actually, they're still hosting the show 400 shows after. I'm still with them, and they created great shows aside from it. So you'll know if you find that right one, and take care of them, of course. Be up for the challenge, and just be willing as well to let go if it's not the right fit. It's, you have to protect your sanity and have a respect of yourself. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. So to our listener and audience, just to let you know, Dave also have his own podcast as well. So if anyone doesn't know, so let's start with the big picture Philippines, which is in 2016, and then you also have a coffee talk. So how did you? So you're a podcast editor, and now as a podcast editor, you have a lot of work, and now you're able to do your own podcast show as well. Is that gonna be connected to your business as
Well, okay. So the big picture is, because it's basically, I was, I had a partner, a co-host who actually pushed me to do it too, and I do editing. Why not start a podcast as well, right? It's easy for us. And actually, just had someone from my team to edit our show. So yeah, why not, right? It's easy and all. And I've also been part of a club called Toastmaster. It's an international organization. So we love talking. That's why I talk a lot. If you've noticed in this interview, so I talk long winded, but nonetheless, yeah. So we wanna I love to talk and share about that. But most importantly, is I was starting this business because I hired an assistant back then. I just had basically one employee who does it, and I was learning about how to start a business, how to run a business. So why not have this ticket, which is podcasting, to interview people, amazing people like you, Miko, or someone in doing their business already. Like in fact, we interviewed some really good entrepreneurs and movers and group leaders in Cebu, specifically because we're based in Cebu. So we interviewed those people and learned a lot. In fact, it's different when and we do live, by the way, live recordings. So I mean, and on set. So we go through their places, we meet them, we talk to them, and it's different. There's just, I totally agree with the phrase "success leaves clues," and I would say a lot of although we're not as consistent with our release on that show, we love, we love on set, and due to the pandemic, we're just doing videos and all that. But the thing is, I've learned a lot from those interviews, and really, I think I owe a lot of where I'm at now, like handling these clients, handling like 7, 10 people already under me, because of that, because of meeting these amazing individuals. So yeah, you have to see past through that, because sometimes you start a podcast trying to change people, and the person that's changed after is you, the one who started it, right? So yeah, that's it. I do have time because I have a team to do it. The coffee talk, it's a different, like yeah, I should turn that into podcast. Actually, I'm planning to do that. It's just that I got really busy with all this, with the business, and I'm starting this new venture into real estate as well. So it's pretty pretty hectic, but yeah, eventually I need to step off this. One thing I learned from the business is, like, they try to not work in the business but on the business. So what that means is you slowly separate yourself from the business and let it run on itself. So I'm on that. Hopefully I can get to that level soon. So many things to learn about business, so many things to learn about, yeah. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you so much, Dave. So, got a last question before wrapping up everything. Do you have any final advice to people who is trying to get into podcast editing as a podcast editor?
Sure. So I think I kind of like what I mentioned earlier about you gotta love podcasting. So sometimes and I think the thing with me, what really got me here, or what I hold on to this, podcast editing is not, for some people it's not fun. It's a boring task. If listening throughout the episode, cutting those mistakes, it can get really boring in a way. But for how I got over that is, I am a learner at heart. So I always, before I edit a show, I always put in this, myself in this mindset that I'm gonna learn something out of this that will probably change my life, or probably help me, become a better person. So no matter what that is, and I think that's a really good thing about this too, because a lot of podcast editors, let's be honest, we're in it for the money. Of course, we want to edit because we want to earn, but for me, that's one thing. But the major thing, I have to complement it with something else so that it makes sense, because doing hours of editing, it gets frustrating. So yeah, for me, I just want to learn. I want to learn anything. And in fact, I've this editing podcast about real estate helped me start something into real estate, got me into this rental, you know, buying properties and all. So it's so that's it. I think that's it. And the mindset that most of these podcasters are really amazing. So I mean, all of them, in fact, because podcast is really, you know, anyone who starts something as a podcast are really like I personally believe are are like the change, you know, those who will change the world, are like they spread the good news. So I personally believe that they're doing something good, and someone actually needs to hear those people because they're experts in their fields, they're trying to be you know, or they're trying to learn more. So you know, just be in that mindset to learn, and you'll love the job. For me, I love learning and earning at the same time, and you know, I love audio editing as a way. I want to you know, I want to make people sound better, and I love the whole thing about mixing, mastering. So I think that's it. You just have to love those parts. And if you don't, then maybe editing is not for you. Or if you know, if you don't like that, by the way, if you have a client and you love the booking side of things, or if you want, you know, there's so many things involved. And if you don't like editing, you know where to find me. I'll edit those show for you. So that's it.
All right. So if someone want to have a chat with you, wanted to connect with you, how they can connect to Dave Visaya?
Yes. So if it's podcast editing or anything related to podcasts, feel free to email us at or you can find us contact form in on our website. It's podcastengineers.com. So it's podcast and engineers .com. So, you know, some people actually, I've been in this mastermind of podcast editors, right? And they kind of like diss me for, maybe they're jealous because I got the URL of podcast engineers, which is a cool term to have. But yeah, you know, they don't want to call it engineers because we're not like engineers. But I believe I started that term because it's not just because we're engineers, like audio engineers, but because we try to engineer a podcast to make it sound better. So I think it's still a good term to use. So we're the podcast engineers, and you can always find us there. But if you want to connect with me personally, yeah, Facebook might be the right way, or LinkedIn. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So Dave Visaya on LinkedIn is one of the best ways to connect.
Thank you so much, Dave. Before I let you go, I got one question. You posted this on Twitter on April 13. I just want an explanation about this one. So you posted on the Twitter saying everyone's doing the best way they can. 99% of people are good. I choose to believe that. Can you elaborate that?
Yeah. So that's really good. You're very observant, Miko. So I think in the world, right, we choose what we believe in. There's these half full, half empty people. And, you know, it's really up to you what you believe in, right? Henry Ford once said that if you're going to succeed, and if you think you're not, then you're both correct, right? It's what you believe in and what your perception of the world. And I always want to believe, because we meet a lot, as I mentioned earlier, there's this crooks and there's this people who take advantage of you. Well, you know, they're the minority. I choose to believe that they're the minority. And for me, most of the people, or at least what I believe in, I always give them the benefit of the doubt that, you know, we're just doing our thing in this world. We're just trying our best to, you know, provide for our family, for ourselves, and for the people we care about. And we're just generally that. I mean, I don't believe that there's, you know, a quick side note. I love traveling before the pandemic, and you know, the more you see the world, the more you realize that everyone's just doing their thing. Like, you know, the vendor out there doing their thing. They're just doing their thing. They just want to put food in their, you know, for their family or from themselves. And if you think about it, we're just trying our best each day, and just be kind, I guess. And that kind of put me into perspective that, you know, let's just be kind to others. You know, I've been late. I have to be honest, I was late on this call, but I'm so honored. I'm so happy that Miko was really kind to me. I mean, you know, so I think those things makes the world a better place. Like, let's just be kind to each other. We're just trying our best. And yeah, if we can help each other, the better, right? So
On that note, thank you, Dave, for your explanation, elaboration on that beautiful tweet that you done on April 13th. And thank you so much to my sponsor. This is the Deaf and Third Training Services, which is on our video podcast. This is the first time that they're going to do a sign language on our video podcast. So hope this is for our deaf community as a pay forward for them. And also thank you for my podcast management service, Kangaroo Firm Media Lab, and to our podcast network as well, Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate. Thank you so much. See you next week.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to visit our website at www.guerrillapodcastsyndicate.com, where you can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, rate and review in this podcast and share it with your friends. You can also join the conversation with Guerrillas RV on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please consider on making a donation to help us keep making the podcast you love. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. A Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate production.